Hi, everyone. Welcome to Entrepreneurship by Design with Dr. C. I'm so glad you're here with us today because we have an incredible guest, Cale Delaney. Cale, who self-titles himself the Accidental-Intentional Millionaire, is a Christian real estate investor, entrepreneur, husband, and father of three. After graduating with an engineering degree from the University of Miami, he began his real estate career in 2006, working as a commercial real estate investment broker in Miami, Florida, where he was awarded the Pacesetter Award for his first year for the most number of listings and sold over $7 million in multifamily and retail real estate. However, with the crash in 2008, he left that business and put real estate on hold until 2020, when he decided to go all in to start building generational wealth for his family. Since then, his investment portfolio went from $300,000 in January 2020 to over $6 million in less than 2 years later. Due to his rapid success, he's been featured on several well-known podcasts, including Bigger Pockets Real Estate Rookie. Cale self-manages all his properties remotely as of December 2022 and left his W-2 job to focus on his real estate ventures. Cale's focus is now building on his short-term rentals business with the intent to diversify into larger multifamily and/or self-storage for additional passive income streams. He also has several projects in the works, including a nonprofit mastermind program, co-hosting, and podcast, the Fit Investor Podcast. Thank you so much for being here today, Cale. It is such a pleasure to have you. And I would love for you to just dive into your journey, how you got here today, and then we can go a little bit deeper.
Yeah. And thank you, Dr. C, for having me on. I appreciate it. And so my business that I do is short-term rentals. Just kind of take it back, I guess, a little bit is, I started out in actually studying engineering. That's what I went to college for. And, during college, I even decided that wasn't the profession that I really wanted to do. And so I was looking for some different options. And I actually ended up working for a commercial real estate brokerage firm down in Miami, Florida, my senior year, and then went full time with them after I graduated. And it was just something at the time that I really just, you hear people make money in real estate. And so I thought it sounded like a good idea. I was young, didn't really know anything, and sounded like, hey, here's a way to make some money. Didn't necessarily turn out to be the case. It was, pretty bad timing. That was 2006 to 2008. So of course, that's when the great real estate crash, the recession, all that stuff. So it was not the best of timing, but I learned a lot. I got to interact with investors. I got to see how, commercial property is underwritten. I did sell a decent amount of commercial properties. So it was a good experience. Frankly, I just wasn't ready for it at that point from a mindset. Like I said, I was 22 or whatever it was at the time. Yeah. And really was not thinking about investing, was not thinking about the future. It was, kind of how people are at that age. So, and so I didn't do anything with it. After I left that profession in 2008, I went into construction management just because it was kind of the logical thing to do with my degree without working in design engineering. And so I worked in that profession for 15 years, a little over 15 years, actually. And, worked my way up to senior project manager for a large construction company, doing projects all across the country. And it was just something that I never really had a passion for. It was a great job on paper, paid well, good benefits, good flexibility and all that stuff, and a good company. But again, just didn't have a passion for it. It was a very stressful job. And so in 2020, beginning of 2020 is kind of when things really shifted for me. And so we have three kids, but our youngest one is 3 years old. And so when he was born towards the end of 2019, I just started thinking a lot more about the future and how, I couldn't really see myself in that job for the next 30, 40 years. And that I needed to find a way out and fast. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of just fell back on real estate just because that was the one thing that I kind of had that little bit of experience with and I knew about. And then I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad, like a lot of people do. And mm-hmm. That was kind of the turning point for me is, when I read that book, it really kind of lit the light bulb in my head of, okay, wow, I understand, if I want to be wealthy, if I want to build this generational wealth, I need to have a business and I need to invest. And so I just dove in from that point on. I said, okay, real estate's going to be my vehicle. I don't exactly know how or what, but that's what's going to do it. And so devoured podcasts, books, did what the experts tell you to do. And, 90 days later, I had my first deal, my first property. And it was actually a long-term rental. It was a fourplex in a local market. I thought that long-term rentals was going to be the way I was going to go. But I just quickly discovered it was going to take a lot longer than what my goal was to reach the income that I wanted with just doing long-term rentals and small multifamily. And so I just started looking at what else is out there, what else in the real estate world is out there that can get me more cash flow. Really, that's what I wanted. I wanted cash flow so that I could leave the W-2. That was my primary goal. And I came across short-term rentals, thankfully. And it was actually on a podcast, and I heard about short-term rentals and I heard about the market that I invest in. And I didn't even know where it was. I looked it up on Google Maps, took a 16-hour drive out there with the family a couple of days later. And 3 weeks later, we were under contract on our first property as a short-term rental. And then fast forward 18 months from then, I built, we bought 7 more cabins. These are log cabins in the Smoky Mountains. And we built up a portfolio of, just under $7 million and 7-figure revenue, gross revenue. And now that's what I do full time. So I left my W-2 last year, and now we're just growing and expanding with the real estate and short-term rentals.
I love it. What a journey too, starting from engineering and then realizing a shift right before you graduated, and then obviously the real estate crash in 2008 and navigating that, and then going full time and realizing what was best for you. But I love that you were able to really be open-minded in learning from books and podcasts and just really divulging all this information that what made sense for you, and really even seeing the difference between long-term rentals versus short-term rentals and where your money and time and energy was better used and served. And I'm curious, from the long-term to short-term, when you started to realize that, what was that shift for you when you started obviously seeing numbers? And obviously that's very clear, but when you heard it on the podcast and started doing that, what transpired from that moment, from when you started really focusing on the short-term?
Yeah. So again, it was that the cash flow was kind of what drew me to the short-term rentals. And, you can make significantly more with a short-term rental than a long-term rental. I mean, that's just a fact. Right. The difference between the two, or one of the main differences between the two, is that, short-term rentals is a more active type of investment. Single family or long-term rental, or especially when you get into multifamily and stuff like that, can be much more passive. However, your cash flow is typically going to be less. So short-term rentals is a little bit more active, and it requires that input. But one of the additional huge benefits to it, which was also attractive to me at the time, were the tax benefits that come with it, which, for anybody who's a relatively, high income earner with a W-2 or other type of active income, one of the big barriers with real estate and long-term rentals specifically, or other asset classes, is that to be able to utilize the depreciation that you get from real estate as a tax write-off, you have to meet a very stringent qualification from the IRS called real estate professional status, which if you have a W-2 or a full-time job, it's virtually impossible to actually qualify. Right. So a way around that is short-term rentals do not have that same qualification. They have a much less stringent qualification criteria, so that you can have a full-time job and you can take that depreciation and, through some tax strategies, you can write off that depreciation, a significant portion of it, and offset your active income. So it's just a tremendously powerful tool besides the real estate itself. So once I kind of realized all these things, that's kind of why I dove right in and moved really fast with it. And like I said, that we had that first property within 3 weeks of going up there. And then within 2-3 months, we had 2 more properties, and then we just kept buying more. And, once you get 2-3 properties, especially if you're still working a regular job and you're able to just reinvest those proceeds from the properties, that snowball effect starts to take place, right? So Now the properties you have start buying the next properties. And so that's, through some other strategies and things and financing, that's how I was able to really scale so quickly. And the one thing I like to point out, though, is that even though I scaled relatively quickly, it really had a foundation from, years and years and years of hard work, right? I mean, all that 15 years, 17 years, whatever, since college that I had been working, I was fiscally responsible. I lived a frugal life. I still lead a frugal life. Saving money. I was doing the stuff that kind of was common sense, put the money in the 401k, the IRA, save money, all that, live below your means, all that stuff, right. Which has a place and can certainly, help. So I did that, and that was what gave me a financial base really for when that light bulb went off and I was ready to pull the trigger. And so that's how I was really able to, begin that scaling really, really quickly. So, anybody who is working and, hasn't gotten started or is getting started, just take that to heart, in that, you really got to be fiscally responsible. I mean, especially if you're going to get into the investing world and entrepreneurship world, when things are left up to you at that point, you got to have good disciplines in place before you get started, or things can kind of get amiss.
Yep, I completely agree with that. And I'm really curious too, because I love that you said it was years of like on the back end of really being able to build the financial aspect to be able to do the things you're doing now. And I'm really curious, what were some of the key strategies that you did use to implement in order to rapidly grow your real estate investments from $300,000 to over $6 million in less than 2 years?
Yeah. So, like I said, I had built up, some money in a 401k and IRAs, and, I had some savings and things of that nature. So, initially that's what I was using, just using that stuff. So I took out a HELOC, on a property that I had, and I took out a 401k loan, during the COVID period as well. There was that, program where you could take up to $100,000 out of an IRA penalty free as well. So I did that. So I kind of utilized all these different avenues with the finances and means that I had at that period to get started. And another tip or technique that a lot of short-term rental investors utilize, the first property you get in a new market, you can typically get qualified to purchase it as a second home or a vacation home, which also allows you to get in with 10% down versus the typical 15 or 20% down for investment loans. And usually it has a little bit better rates. Now I think everything's kind of on par, so it doesn't really matter, but still the down payment, reduction in the down payment can be a big help in being able to get in on that first property as well. So that was really how I got started. And then, like I said, I used that, I maxed out that HELOC that I had on that property. I used that 401k loan. I used, the savings and the other stuff. And then, once I had those 2-3 properties and they started, got up and running and started generating profits, I just let that build up and, kept my eyes open for the next opportunity. And when I saw something, I was able to pull the trigger from that snowball effect as well. So that's kind of how I was able to really scale relatively quickly. And I did also take on a couple partners. And actually the first property I purchased I partnered with my father on as well. So, we split that, 50-50. And then one other property I partnered with a friend of mine to help him kind of get into the industry and get him going as well. So, that's another big thing. Especially if you know someone that's in the industry, that makes it even easier. But, reaching out to friends and family, that can help you financially perhaps, or maybe that have some experience, or just networking and finding someone you can partner with. I mean, that's one of the best ways and easiest ways, frankly, for getting in and really getting things scaled up and fast paced. So, I didn't, besides reaching out to my father at that time, I wasn't really doing networking and that type of stuff at the time. But going back, if I were to start over again, I probably would put a bigger emphasis on networking in the very beginning. It's something that's very important that I do a lot now. But it's just one of those things in any business. Networking is going to be huge.
I couldn't agree more. It definitely is about those connections, because you never know who knows who. And then also they can be renting short term from you as well if you make that connection. So it all works. And I'm curious, because you have so many properties that you have been able to invest in, and the short term rentals as well. How do you manage that successfully with all of the ones that you have, all the properties, while generating over 1.2 million in bookings and having thousands of guests?
Yeah. So software is your friend.
Yes.
And just like any industry, there's industry specific softwares. And the beauty of short-term rentals is that you can pretty easily automate about 90%. I say about 90% of the business through the various softwares that are out there. The other 10% is, going to be your active involvement, which is going to be, guest communications or coordinations with cleaners and maintenance, or when issues come up and that type of thing, and optimizing and, working on your pricing and your listings. And, and there's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down. Like once you kind of get that baseline system in place, there's just, so many other things that you can kind of start diving into with it. But, for a relatively standard or system or process, I mean, the softwares that are out there are pretty good, and everything really integrates, and so it becomes, like I said, about 90% automated, and it's just through that you're able to do a lot. So frankly, if I were to just kind of let things go on their own and not get into a lot of the, deeper details and stuff like I'm kind of doing now, because I have the time. You could run a setup or a business the size that I have right now with these number of properties pretty easily for, an hour a day, if that. Some days you might spend a lot more because you have an issue you're trying to take care of, or some days you might spend less, but, on average, I'd say that I spend a lot more time than that, frankly, like I said, because I have the time. And so I'm kind of trying to work on a lot of things. And at this point, trying to catch up on a lot of back end stuff as well, because, when you scale that quickly, you don't necessarily have all the things in place. And so now trying to work that in and kind of get everything else caught up on the back end. But the softwares really are the key. And that's what allows me to do it. Because you can do it remotely. And that was one of the big things that attracted me to short-term rentals as well, is that I wanted something that I could be location independent with, that I could be anywhere. I could travel the world. I could move to another country. I could be wherever I want to be. And as long as I had a phone and a connection, I could manage my business. And that it really does have that ability. I mean, I recently took a 3-week trip through Europe, just me and my 3-year-old. And I didn't have service usually throughout the day. So I'd kind of check in the morning and the evening, and that was it. Thankfully no issues, but so you can ultimately set things up so that you can have a lot of flexibility and that type of thing. So that's really how I do it. And it's just key getting your softwares, getting your system set up, and being involved in a community as well. Going back to the networking, because even if it's just online, like I'm very active in various Facebook groups with short-term rental investors, because if you run into something that you're not really sure how to handle, you've got a sounding board, and chances are there's somebody who knows what to do. I mean, I had a recent issue where I lost water at a cabin and was trying to figure out what to do. Reached out in the group, I got tons of different suggestions, advice, and all that thing. So having those types of communities are really key as well, so that you can learn and you can share your experience as well. But yeah, when issues come up, that's probably going to be your quickest way to find an answer or the best solution for it as well.
Yeah, I do believe community is so important. Just being able to network and get the answers quickly, especially if somebody that's staying at one of the short rentals is like, I don't have water, I can't take a shower, I can't drink water, or whatever it is. But being able to resolve that very quickly. And I want to just go back where you were saying about the softwares. What are some of the softwares you've been able to use with your business and growing it?
Sure. So with the short-term rental industry specific, there's really some key softwares, and I can give you the names of the specific ones that I use, but in general, you have what's called a PMS, or property management software. And that's kind of your hub That's where, all your other things connect. That's where your Airbnb, your VRBO, your direct booking platforms all connect in. Your pricing platform connects in, and that just brings everything together, and then disperses the inputs out to those various platforms. We also use a dynamic pricing tool, which is another software that, through various algorithms, market data, everything, it can, and parameters that you set, it dynamically adjusts your pricing on a daily basis. So, based on occupancy, demand factors, holidays, events, all these various things, it'll adjust your pricing on a daily basis and push that out to your platforms, so that you can really optimize your pricing and your revenue through that. Those are really the key things. I mean, from there, the big push now, especially with short-term rentals, is getting more involved in direct bookings, outside of the major platforms like Airbnb and VRBO. And there's various ways and companies that can build websites and all that stuff. But it gives you, much better control. Typically you can actually make more while the guest also ends up paying less, because you can avoid, all those platform fees are pretty heavy. And so, just a lot better control and quality and pricing abilities. And in those black swan events like a COVID or things like that, during that time, those platforms just canceled and shut everybody down. Right. If you have the control in a direct booking site, then you are in control, and, you can work with guests and if they want to stay or not stay. So you're not at the mercy of, some major platform that can do whatever they want at the end of the day. So that's a big push in the industry as well these days. But yeah, your property management software and your dynamic pricing, those are going to be your two major tools that allow you to really do 90% of things automated.
Yeah, that's significant. And just even diversifying where you're posting it to and having the direct booking link. And I'm curious, because you've diversified your income streams through larger multifamily units, but also self-storage investments as well. What steps have you been taking to build those sources of income?
It's through networking and research, right? So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my end game at this point, is to, still build out the short-term rental business a little bit more, just because it is so powerful with the cash flow and the tax advantages and everything. But at the end of the day, begin diversifying more into these larger assets that have more significant wealth building abilities. Not that short-term rental doesn't, because you can make some significant wealth still with short-term rentals through appreciation and things like that. But commercial assets, there's, it's a whole nother ball game. The numbers are bigger. You have the ability to force appreciation instead of relying on market appreciation. And so that's kind of my end game, is ultimately diversifying and getting into that more. And so, I'm beginning to start networking with people in those areas and those asset classes, and just doing my due diligence and my research through, again, books, podcasts, community, all that stuff as well.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned generational wealth, and I know that's something that you're teaching your children about, and just really expanding on. What lessons have you learned from your journey as the Accidental-Intentional Millionaire and your commitment to building generational wealth?
Yes. Like I had touched on earlier, in that, the so-called common sense financial, education, if you want to call it that, that we get through, or lack thereof, through school and just normal society and life. It teaches you to take what it considers the safe route, right? Which is, go to school, go to college, get a job, work, whatever it is, 50, 60 years. Hopefully you can retire, put your money in a 401k, IRA, savings, all this stuff and all that. Anybody who really starts to think about that, I think you're going to realize that it's not nearly as safe as you think. And frankly, it's almost set up to fail. It's almost set up for you to retire poor. So if you want to really start building generational wealth, you got to have the financial literacy, that, is a common phrase for it, which that means you have to understand business, you have to understand investing, and you have to start letting your money work for you And the ultimate is letting other people's money work for you, right? And utilizing debt to your advantage, good debt to your advantage. Unfortunately, we're taught to use the bad debt, consumer debt, which is just a black hole that is not good. So I try to teach my kids that, again, there's good debt and bad debt. You don't want bad debt. You don't want to go buy a new car. You don't want to go buy the newest iPhone or whatever that comes out. It's just from a simple standpoint, it's okay to have used things. Like there's nothing wrong with having used things. I mean, I get most of my stuff used. I mean, I prefer, why do I want to spend full price when I can get it for half price? I mean, so there's that kind of simple stuff. And then from an investing and kind of long-term standpoint, I'm just trying to get them interested in things. So one thing that I do is for birthdays and Christmas, instead of getting them a toy or, a gift or anything like that, what I give them is for their birthdays, they get, one silver coin for each year of their age. So, my oldest recently turned 12. So he got 12 silver coins, 1 ounce silver coins. And then for Christmas, they get a little 1 gram gold bar. And so, it's cool to look at. You can touch it, you can feel it. They have their case for it and all that stuff. And, by the time they're 18, even if gold and silver don't increase in value or the dollar decrease in value, it's going to be a sizable chunk of money that they're going to have. That can be seed money for a business or college if they do decide to go to college. And so I just try to impress that upon them as, this is how you need to start thinking. Let's not think about today. Let's not think about, the what I want now. Let's start deferring that gratification and let's start learning about, thinking long term and about the future. So that's just one simple thing that I do with them, and just try to impress upon them of, again, consumer debt is bad. Good debt, buying assets, buying cash flowing assets. Those are the things that you want to be able to do and want to be able to use. And just letting them understand that from an early age is going to be critical. And frankly, I tell them that I would prefer, and this may be controversial for some people, but I prefer that they don't go to college unless they truly want to do something that requires it. So, if they want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, then, hey, by all means, go to college. If that's your passion, do it. But if you just want to go to college because that's what you think is the right thing to do, don't. I'd much rather you start a business, do some investing, get into real estate, or you're going to be so much better off than 90% of the people out there if you just do that. So I just try to talk to them about those things and get them thinking about stuff.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that opinion. My husband and I talk about that all the time too, of just understanding, because we're both entrepreneurs, but also we both come from educated families, things along those lines. However, I think because my background is psychology, and I think like some professions you do need certain degrees, but there's a lot that you don't. And there's so much you learn in real life and experiences. I could talk about this for hours and I'm not going to, but I definitely agree with that, because I do think there's this concept where, well, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get a good job, and then you're in debt. And like people get scholarships and grants and all that stuff too, but majority of people don't. I didn't. I mean, I got a little cheerleading scholarship, but that was it. And so I think looking at where your heart desires and like what you want to do, but exposing kids from an early age to understand there's a lot of opportunities out there. You don't have to stay in one.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to get too far off the rabbit hole, but or down the rabbit hole, but the other thing is when kids get into college, they're immediately preyed upon with this bad debt. Again, this consumer debt. I mean, what's the first thing they do? They go to a financial aid office. Hey, look, here's all the money you can get. Oh, don't worry about paying it back right now. Do you got time for that? Yeah. Well, now you graduate, you're 6 figures in debt. You got a job that's probably not even paying 6 figures, and then it's something I actually just learned recently from listening to another podcast, is that, private student debt, actually, if you, default or you pass away or whatever, that debt stays with your family now. The government debt, educational debt does not, but private student loans do. They don't die.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it can literally destroy a family's life, their credit, which is tremendously important. So it's a very serious thing. And you got these kids who are 18 who don't know anything, and they're just kind of getting money thrown at them almost, to go to college and whatever else. And it can have some really serious repercussions. So it's something that needs to be really considered. And, parents, talk with your kids about it. And like we were just talking about, there's so many other opportunities. And especially when you come to the business and investing world that are going to be much, much more lucrative than a lot of the W-2s or jobs that are out there.
I completely agree. But I'm curious because I know you are a husband, you're a father, you're a Christian, you're an entrepreneur, you're doing so many things, but how has just really balancing being a Christian, a husband, and a father of 3 while achieving financial success and just success in life?
Yeah. It's not easy. And frankly, I mean, even without kids and the family and everything else, building a business is just, it's not easy. It's going to take sacrifices. And I think that's one thing you got to be conscious of and prepared for on the front end, is that if you are going to start a business, to whatever degree, it's going to take some level of sacrifice, and the level of your success is going to be corresponding to the level of your sacrifice for a period. So, it was difficult. I mean, like I said, I was working that full-time job, which was a pretty demanding, senior level management job. Right. And even actually during the midst of getting started, it was actually, oh gosh, I think maybe 6 months or less after actually like getting that first short-term rental property. And, so I think we had just closed on the second and third ones, and then we're converting one of our long-terms into a short-term rental. And then I won't go into it too much, but, my wife, she actually went to Ecuador, where she's from. And through a series of events, she had to have an operation there that went very wrong. And she ended up being stuck there out of the country for over 6 months. And so unexpectedly, now I've got in the middle of this business and everything, got the job, and now I got 3 kids to take care of, and my wife's out of the country with these medical issues. So that took some maneuvering. Thankfully I had some family that helped out. We even sent the older kids, to another state with my parents to help out for a little bit. We brought my wife's father in from Ecuador to help out for a little bit. So utilize as much resources as we could. But it was a difficult time. And then even after that, once, she got back and everything, it was still a lot more going on with that we had to take care of here. And so, yeah, it was just a lot, but, I was committed to it, at that point. And so I wasn't going to let it stop me no matter what. And that's kind of what you got to do, is you got to push through. And I tell everybody, when you're getting started in anything, again, be prepared for the sacrifice and the struggles, but more importantly, have a strong why or a reason that you're doing it. Because, when those challenges do come, it's easy to throw in the towel, right? So if you're not full on committed to it and you have that strong why to lean back on, that's why a lot of people, either fail or give up. So, again, I just pushed through it. And yeah, it did take some sacrifices personally, through that time. And so, but it panned out. And now, I can't say things are perfect. I'm still trying to figure out the new rhythm of life at this point, as a full-time entrepreneur, because it is different. It is very different from the W-2 world. You have, a different community, or you lose a community, maybe that you had for a while. You're in control of your days now, so you have to really be disciplined and be able to give yourself that structure, because you're the only one really holding yourself accountable at that point. And so it's at the stage now where, frankly, I do need to start shifting the focus more back to the family and everything like that, because, those things were sacrificed in the sense for a bit while I was getting things up and running. So now it's trying to get that stuff more back in line and prioritized and balanced. and, getting my priority back on, faith and everything like that. Like I said, I'm Christian. So that's a big part of things for me. And so, yeah, so I'm in that phase right now where I'm trying to restore a bit more balance to my life, because it had been out of whack for a little while I was building everything up. So yeah, long answer, but the short thing is ultimately it's not easy. You just got to be prepared and have a strong reason why you're doing it so you can push through.
Absolutely. And I appreciate your transparency in that as well, because I do think it's not all rainbows and sunshine when it comes to entrepreneurship, but also balancing family and life and faith and everything else that we have on our plates, but learning how to really portion it out and what makes sense. And I think mentioned community and networking throughout this whole interview as well. But I'm curious, what inspired you to pursue additional projects like the nonprofit mastermind programs, co-hosting, but also podcasting yourself?
Yeah. So we recently launched the podcast. We call it The Fit Investor. So we talk about three things: how to be fit financially, physically, and faithfully. And for me, I kind of the main thing was I wanted to start bringing or providing a forum for people to be able to speak openly about their faith in an entrepreneurial setting. Because at least what I found in the real estate industry and the real estate investing industry is I just started seeing that the more people I talk to, even though you may not see it on the surface, the more you talk to and get to know people, I started seeing that a lot of real estate investors are Christians. And I think it kind of goes hand in hand with that. The real estate investing community is one of the most open and sharing industries out there. It's not cutthroat like so many others are. And so I think it goes hand in hand with kind of those morals and everything with Christianity. But so I just started, kind of picking up on that and realizing that to me, I felt there was a need for having a forum to, again, be able to openly discuss your faith, and with other people who are, financially successful or in different areas. Just because in today's society, it gets repressed so much. I mean, let's just be honest. You're taught to leave your faith out the door. And for me, faith has been a big part of my life, and it was a big part of my investing journey as well. And so I wanted to give credit where credit is due, and try to give that forum out there. So that was one of the big motivations in starting the podcast. And then the other things, the co-hosting, the consulting and all that stuff, just trying to diversify and expand and, bring in additional revenue streams as well. I built up a certain level of expertise over these years and everything. And I have the ability to help people, do the same thing that I'm doing. So, I would love for people to, be able to get out of the W-2 rat race if that's what they're looking for, or, if they just, if they love their job and they just want to start building that generational wealth, or, start learning how to apply these tax advantages. There's just so many powerful tools that, it doesn't need to take you years to be able to, understand and learn them. You can get with somebody who's gone through it and really fast track that. So that's kind of why I've started doing those things as well.
Love it. It's giving back to the community.
Yeah.
And what advice do you have for people that are aspiring to go into the real estate market, investing, whatnot, but looking to follow a similar path to financial freedom? I know you have a lot of resources, but what advice do you have for them?
One of the biggest challenges that people get to when they're first beginning to invest in real estate, and frankly, probably with many other business types as well, is the so-called analysis paralysis, where you get kind of stuck in that phase of just looking at things and not pulling the trigger, right? Because it is scary to go over that first hurdle and maybe put out the most money that you've ever put out on something, right? Yeah. So I think that's one of the biggest hurdles that people get into. And so I just encourage people that, look, we've all been there. We've all gone through that fear, but you just got to push through it. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to buckle up and just go for it. And, hey, it may not work out. That's just a reality of it. It may not work out. And even if it doesn't work out on your first deal, it doesn't mean that you can't still succeed. I mean, I know so many successful real estate investors that when I hear their stories, of their early years or beginning, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I probably would have given up. I mean, goodness gracious. But so there's so many people out there that have gone through this and that have, had bumps and bruises along the way. So yeah, just get started, and of course do it as soon as you can, right? I mean, just like with everything, the sooner the better. And then just being prepared for what entrepreneurship is, and what it's like, because like I said, I call myself, the accidental intentional millionaire and entrepreneur, because I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur. I mean, that was the furthest thing from my mind. I literally never thought I would do that. Thought it was way too risky. I want stability, whatever. I want benefits, whatever. Now I'm very glad I'm in the position I'm in. But it is difficult. And coming from a W-2 world for so long to an entrepreneurial world now, it requires another big mindset shift. And I'm still working through as well. So just be prepared for those types of things. Like again, it's going to be challenges. It's going to be struggles. But the reward is going to be, much greater. So just have that long-term mindset and just be prepared for those things.
Well said. And going back to that mindset shift, because when you're going from W-2 to entrepreneur, it can be really scary, or the scarcity mindset might come in because it's not like benefits and stable income, but you can make so much more when you're an entrepreneur versus having that cap of what you can make. I think it's just really following each journey, and every journey is different, but I appreciate you sharing your journey. And I would love to know, what are you working on? What are your future aspirations and goals? I know you got a lot of things in the works, but what are you really focused on in the next year or so?
Yeah. So kind of my I guess 1 year goals, let's say. So again, I am looking to acquire some more short-term rental properties, and grow that portfolio a little bit. But then, like I'd mentioned earlier, the end goal is to start transitioning and diversifying into some larger asset classes, multifamily, commercial. And I've also, again, starting those different businesses or revenue streams, the coaching and consulting. So I want to continue to grow those, because frankly, I enjoy like the consulting and the coaching part. I probably enjoy that the most. It's frankly, it's fun to help other people along the way, and kind of see the light bulbs go off and enjoy the success that they have. So I really hope to continue building and growing that. I think getting a better, again, what we touched on earlier, getting a better balance back to life. So focusing more on the family and everything. Just getting back to a better balanced lifestyle.
I love it. Well, it sounds like you're on the right track. And I would love to know, where can people find you, find your services? We're going to link everything below, and your short-term rentals as well, but we'll link everything below.
Yeah. So Facebook, you can find me, just Cale Delaney. Like I said, I'm very active on Facebook, specifically in these real estate investing short-term rental communities, but you can find me there. You can reach out to me there. Instagram, Cale_Delaney. You can find me there. I'll be honest, I'm not terrific on that. And that actually, I should have mentioned that too. That's on the 1 year goal as well. Building up the social media and all that stuff. It's in the works. But you can find me there, and you can message me there as well. Those are probably the two best ways to, get in touch with me. And then, like I said, you'll have the links for my, my website and everything else, in the notes, of course. So, and check out the Fit Investor podcast if you're interested.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for just sharing your journey, all your transparency and insights of the ups and downs and everything in between, but really just what you've been able to accomplish in such a short period of time, really the depth of it and everything that you're working on years prior to now. And it didn't happen overnight. It might have felt like it in the first 2 years of the short-term rentals, but being able to really use your knowledge base from previous years and applying it now. But I appreciate everything you shared today.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
Thank you. And make sure to like, subscribe, comment below. What was the biggest takeaway from Cale today? I'm sure he would love to see that comment, and we'll see you on the next episode.